For thousands of years, we've been asking the question, what is a good life? Two Greek philosophers gave two very different answers. One of them said that a good life is a life that feels good. The other said that the good life is a life that is good, whether or not it feels that way. For a long time, there was no real way to settle the argument. It came down to taste or belief or whoever made the better speech. But in the last 20 years or so, something changed. We learned how to look for the answer inside the human body, in the blood, in the aging brain, and by observing how long a person ends up living. It turns out your body has a strong opinion about which of these two lives you should be living. And by the end of this video, I think you will know what kind of life you want to build. Around 300 BC, a philosopher named Epicurus opened a school in a garden outside of Athens. He set out to figure out from the ground up what makes a good life. His starting point was a simple observation. Watch any newborn creature, he said. Before anyone has taught it anything, it moves towards what feels good and away from what hurts. So he argued that nature gives every living thing the same instruction: seek pleasure and avoid pain. For Epicurus, though, pleasure was not guilt. Pleasure, he wrote, is the beginning and the end of the blessed life. But what exactly is pleasure? His answer sometimes confuses people, because he didn't mean the feast or the wine or the party that goes late into the night, although there was some of that, but he was saying that the highest pleasure is not a sensation at all. It is a state you are in when nothing hurts your body and nothing grates your mind. He called it the absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the soul. And once you see pleasure that way, the way to it turns around. You do not reach peace by piling on more, but you reach it by needing less. So Epicurus told his students to sort their desires into 3 baskets: natural and necessary, like food, shelter, and safety; natural but not necessary, like indulgent food; and empty, like fame, power, and endless wealth. The empty ones have no limit, so they can never be filled, and they leave us restless for life. Now, what I appreciate about Epicurus is that he actually walked the talk. He survived on bread and water, and when he received a small pot of cheese, he called it a feast. Because to him, a mind with nothing bothering him was the richest thing a person could own. So that's one legitimate way to live your life. That's the first answer. Keep your desires small, the people you love near, and let life be gentle. And that doesn't sound like a bad life at all. But there's another philosopher who I think had a better idea. Let's go to our second man. Aristotle came a little earlier, and he agreed with Epicurus on one point. He thought every human being is, in the end, after happiness. Think of it this way. If I ask you, what do you want? You may say, money. I follow the questioning with, what do you want the money for? You may say, to buy a plane ticket. And why? To travel to Greece. And why? To visit a Greek island. And why? To eat delicious food and explore the views. And why would you want to do that? In the end, the answer is always to be happy. We want money for what it buys and health for what it lets us do. But happiness, says Aristotle, we want for its own sake. It is a thing that all other things are for. Now, the disagreement is about what happiness is and where it comes from. So, Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, lays out a few options. He asks, does happiness come from pleasure, honor, or wealth? Well, let's reason through them, as he did in his book. Well, it can't be pleasure, he said, because a life spent chasing pleasure is a life fit for grazing cattle. You will always be pursuing a moving target. The desires of men are many and have no ceiling. For example, people in the past had a beautiful, strong horse and would find pleasure in that. Nowadays, it's a BMW or a private jet or a big house. If you pursue pleasure for things or experiences, you will never truly reach the end. And what's the problem with honor? Well, it's determined by other people's opinions, which can change overnight. And who do you want honor from? There are billions of people in the world who hold you to a different standard of honor. And what's wrong with wealth? Well, it can sure be nice, but it comes and goes. It's unpredictable. And most importantly, it's a means to an end. Remember, what do you want the money for? And happiness, the thing we are aiming for, has to be something we wish for its own sake. So, to find the real answer, Aristotle asked a clever question. What is a human being for? Think of it this way. A good knife is one that cuts well, because cutting is what a knife is for. A good flute player plays well, so everything with a purpose is good when he does that purpose well. So what is the one thing a human being does that nothing else does? Aristotle reasons like this. It can't be just being alive, because plants do that. It can't be sense perception and movement. Why? Well, animals do that too. So what makes humans unique? What sets us apart is the mind, the power to reason, to choose, to act on purpose. So a good human life, he concluded, is one that does that distinctly human thing and does it well. He gave it a precise name, eudaimonia, that is flourishing happiness, which for him is the activity of the soul in line with virtue. But he makes the explicit point that even virtue proves on examination to be too incomplete to be the end. Why? Because a corrupt man and a virtuous man look the same as they sleep. Virtue must be active. So in the end, he finally concludes with, happiness is exercising the virtues. But what is virtue? In Greek, it means excellence of character, courage, honesty, generosity, justice, self-control. And Aristotle said that virtue is not something you are born with and not a mood you happen to be in. It is a habit you build by doing. We become just by doing just acts, and brave by doing brave acts, he writes. You're not courageous because you feel it. You become courageous by acting that way again and again until it is simply who you are. And notice where those virtues point. Justice, generosity, courage. Pretty much all of them are about how you treat other people. Aristotle called those social beings, made to live together, and he thought that the good life happens among other people, not alone in a quiet garden. Now, pleasure still has a place in the picture. He just moves it to a different seat. The person of a good character comes to enjoy doing the right thing, so pleasure follows virtue like a shadow. It is a reward for a life well lived, not the aim of it. And happiness is never determined by one good day. One swallow does not make a summer, neither does one fine day. Similarly, one day or a brief time of happiness does not make a person entirely happy, writes Aristotle. So that's the second answer. Not feel good, but be good, and let the good feeling come as a result. Now we have both answers on the table, and the thing is, they're both pretty decent responses. One offers a calm life of simple pleasures, and the other offers a life of meaning. Then, in our own lifetime, science found a side door into the question. Because these two ways of living do not only feel different, they leave different marks on the body. In 2013, a team led by Barbara Fredrickson and Steve Cole tried something new. They took blood from people who leaned toward each kind of happiness and they looked at which genes were switched on inside their immune cells. Now, the people whose happiness came mostly from hedonic, Epicurean pleasure showed more activity in the genes that drive inflammation and are tied to heart disease, cancer, and aging. The people whose happiness came from meaning showed the opposite. It was a stunning idea that two kinds of happiness seemed to reach all the way down into the cell. Now, that first study kicked off years of back and forth, and the finding that pleasure is bad for your cells hasn't fully held up. That is, the Epicurean pleasure doesn't seem to be that bad for you, and it makes sense. Things that feel good might be wired to be good for you. But the link between the meaning and purpose kind of happiness and the lower activity in inflammation genes has kept appearing in later work, especially when the meaning comes from feeling connected to other people. And what's interesting is when researchers try to raise that kind of well-being on purpose, the inflammation tends to reduce. So pleasure is not poison, and in moderation, Epicureans can rest easy. But let's focus more on pleasure through meaning, because it appears to do something that pleasure on its own does not. If meaning lowers inflammation, you could expect it to show up in other big outcomes too, and it does, most dramatically in the brain. A research team in Chicago followed more than 900 older adults for up to 7 years, watching who developed Alzheimer's disease. The people with the strongest sense of purpose were about 2.5 times more likely to stay free of the disease than the people with the weakest sense of purpose. 2.5 times, from nothing more than whether they felt their life had a direction. And if we widen the view, the same shape holds for death itself. Pulling together 10 studies on more than 136,000 people, researchers found that a strong sense of purpose came with a roughly 17% lower risk of dying over the following years, along with fewer heart attacks and strokes. And a small practical note, because purpose can sound lofty, but in these studies, it is measured with very plain statements like, I have a sense of direction in my life, or I have a thing I look forward to every day. So it is not about a grand calling, it is about having reasons to get up tomorrow. The most striking number comes from Japan, from a word that captures Aristotle's idea more or less. It's called Ikigai. It means roughly the reason you get out of the bed in the morning. Researchers asked more than 40,000 Japanese adults one plain question. Do you have Ikigai? Yes or no? Then they followed them for 7 years. The people who said no to Ikigai were about 50% more likely to die in those 7 years. 50%. That is the size of a gap you would expect from a serious medical risk factor, and it came from a single question about whether life felt worth living. So meaning outperforms pleasure where your health is concerned, but there is one more study, and it turns this from a health tip into something closer to a way of living. Researchers followed thousands of older adults who volunteered. Then they asked them one extra question. Why do you do it? Some people said they volunteered to help other people. Others were honest that they did it mostly for themselves, to feel better, to meet people, or just to get out of the house. And years later, the ones who volunteered to help others were clearly less likely to have died. And the ones who did it mainly for themselves got no health benefit at all. This is just one study, but just think about that, because it is a whole argument in miniature. The benefit did not come from the activity itself. It came from the intention behind it. Meaning helps you the most when it is pointed outward at something past yourself. Which is essentially what Aristotle was saying the entire time. The virtues, the things that make a life good, are almost all about how you show up for other people. Do good honestly for its own sake, and the good finds its way back to you. But if you try to do it as a trick to help yourself, the effect seems to fade. You cannot fake your way through this one, you have to mean it. So where does all of this leave you, standing between the two Greeks? If you found this video insightful or learned something new, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the video with your friends and family. And let me know in the comments, did you like the philosophical angle? Also, let me know what you would like me to cover. I do carefully read the comments, and I do highly appreciate your insights. Thank you for watching all the way to the end.